On today's show, what do the numbers say? On one hand, Houston will have a ton of opportunities to create cap relief. On the other hand, that cash needs to be invested into the offense.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town. Today's episode and every episode of the Locked On Texans podcast is for Texan fans all around. Fun show lined up today. You guys are still a little emotional and harboring feelings over the last time you saw your franchise play football, mainly directed towards the franchise quarterback in C.J. Stroud. So to end off today's show, the Ear to the Street segment is back. What have y'all been talking about? I want to respond to some of the comments, but the first two segments is going to be about, don't fret, guys. Caserio is a genius. And this is coming from somebody who's been very critical of Nick Caserio, but when he's good, he's damn good. And he's been good in being able to be flexible each and every offseason for the Houston Texans. And so we'll talk about that and then what to do with the money that the Houston Texans can create, the cap relief that the Houston Texans can create. I'm your Texans football analyst and football analyst. I'm your Texans credential media member and football analyst, John Hickman. Thank you for making the Locked On Texans podcast your first listen of the day. I want to shout out my everydayers from the Himalayas for keeping the show and energy going. Now, how much cap space could each team in the NFL free up with simple restructures? At the top of the list per over the cap is Dallas. So you guys better expect them boys up 45 to be very aggressive with putting together a competitive roster. But coming in at 8, coming in hot at number 8, stay hot, with the possibility of creating nearly $78 million, the Houston Texans. Now, here's a reminder that restructure converts payments into prorated signing bonuses spread over the remaining years of the contract. So when I see Houston can potentially create a good amount of money to retain key players like Ed Ingram, Sheldon Rankins, right, and get what they need in free agency, the question is, should Houston go all in? That's my question to you guys. Should Houston go all in this offseason? Is this offseason the make it or break it year? And the answer to that question is simple. YES. Yes. I don't care what anybody says. Houston has to be looking at what Seattle did with a defensive-minded head coach and thinking to themselves, they have what it takes defensively to make the same run Seattle did. What's the difference throughout the year? See, Seattle drafted offensive linemen for the last 3 seasons to where in this year, this pinnacle year, they were already developed. They were already great at their job. They already had a franchise, quote unquote, franchise running back. He's going to be a free agent this year. They already drafted a backup running back that was pretty good. Like, these are some of the things that Houston Texans have not been able to do. So in this offseason, can Houston afford to wait on an interior guard to develop in the league? Can Houston have that? Does Houston have that luxury? The answer to that question is no. So with this championship window, I've talked about it ad nauseum. Hey, they got to get guys in here that are experienced, that you don't have to wait on. Even with Cole Popovich doing a great job. And it should have started years ago when Kenyon Green was drafted to Houston. But Chris Strauss was the offensive line coach. It wasn't Cole Popovich. And from there, the disconnect happened with the offensive line philosophy, what the expectations were, coaching them up. And Kenyon Green is now out the lead. Ariante Ursery looks to be one of the better young left tackles that was drafted in the 2025 draft, right? To the extent of, hey, listen, I would take Ursery over Will Campbell right now. But what I'm getting at is, for Houston, it's absolutely perfect timing for them to be aggressive this offseason in mending broken fences, or mending broken, chains, fixing a weak link on this offense. And this is why I think Houston should make that decision to be aggressive. The risk in this case is not greater than the reward. Houston is close to getting over the hump, right? We can agree, all right? Being aggressive with restructuring contracts help create a competitive offensive roster. Restructuring kicks the old money down the road. So I understand the money just doesn't go away, right? That's not what's going to happen. But none of the players Houston would restructure, would you mind being here or being paid down the road if Houston gets a chip? Let's face it, you win a Super Bowl, that money that the franchise is going to earn from winning a Super Bowl, right? The publicity and then the expectations. And now for Houston, if the Texans get to a championship game the following season, you're going to look at more butts in the stadium. So imagine a Super Bowl. NRG Stadium may be rocking again. And I think that's what it's been lacking. But you wouldn't mind any of that if Houston wins a chip. And let's be honest, I think Houston is in this position because of how Caserio restructures those initial extensions. Kudos to him because of the major restructures that Houston can work with. 6 of the 7 are on 3-year deals. I give Caserio a lot of flack here on this show, but when he's good, and he's maximized those 3-year contracts like a genius. He has been very genius with those decisions. It's the perfect time to limit. It's a perfect opportunity to limit dead money for one, those 3-year contracts, but for two, and more importantly, the back end flexibility to assess the roster each offseason and make additions might keep Houston in that championship window for 2 to 3 seasons. But only if the cap created gets the right guys in the building, right? Linderbaum, Mays, Braden Smith is a name. The available running backs in free agency. They're not eye-popping. They're not great, but there's some guys in here that could absolutely upgrade the running back room. Whoever the top target is, Caserio has stayed ahead of the curve each and every offseason now and can restructure to set Houston up nicely. So I think it's important for us to sit back and think to ourselves, what does restructuring contracts do for Houston long term? Long term, because face it, if they don't restructure and they live in a situation where they have to go, they got to go bargain hunting in free agency, and then they got to count on rookies to develop and be stout week 1 of the regular season in 2026. That hurts Houston's Super Bowl chances and window compared to going all in. All right. A lot of uncertainty when you draft some of these guys, and Houston knows that very well. And if Houston has to go bargain shopping at offensive line, yeah, I mean, like you trade for Ed Ingram, right? He was on that rookie deal. You pick up Ed Ingram last year on a rookie deal. Cole Popovich gets him to turn his season around, his career around. He played some good football. But they went bargain shopping with Laker Thompson. How did that turn out? You can't afford that this year, in my opinion. And again, I think, and I don't even know if it's coming from the top, like ownership. I think it's coming directly from D'Amico. My style of play defensively just won the Super Bowl. Because if you look at when the Houston Texans played Seattle, 4 turnovers, right? They would have demolished Bo Nix and them boys, the Bo Nicholas Denver Broncos. It would have been maybe more competitive Super Bowl if the Houston Texans offense has the tools that they need. This is the perfect opportunity in offseason to do it, because not doing it again hurts that championship window more than saying, you know what, screw it, let's go all in. Let's go all in. And with how Nick Caserio and these 3-year deals work out, he does a great job of maximizing the talent, the value, and cash for 3-year deals, and really 2-year deals as well. So he ain't been able to draft too many good offensive linemen, but he's been great in terms of the extensions and keeping Houston at a place where they can be competitive each and every offseason. And like I said, though, it all depends on what Houston does when they get that money. When that money is created, what's next for Houston? They got to find the right guys. They got to get guys in the building that you don't have to worry about. No questions about certified studs. Let's talk about that on the other side. Before that conversation starts, tax season doesn't have to take over your life. Not at all. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours and hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling everything you need for them to handle. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Getting back to talking Texans. Hey, real quick, I want to shout out Will Anderson over this past weekend for visiting the San Quentin prison to speak with inmates to share his journey of growing closer to his faith and belief. I think those are things that we need to highlight. Let me just say this. I think it's important to highlight that because when you look around the NFL right now, the state of the NFL, I think it's at a solid place. Like the league isn't in a space where with the NBA, you got teams tanking, right? In the NBA, NFL, majority of the teams are trying to be competitive, right? But you also have stories where players are just doing ridiculous things, right? Or players are getting harmed in spaces where it's meant to celebrate the league, but now you got a player getting shot, and now you have a player doing wild accusations with their family, loved ones, whatever it is, and then you come to Houston, right? And Houston, used to be different, but now under D'Amico Ryans, and I'm not saying Houston doesn't have their own, internal things going on, but to see Will Anderson and CJ Stroud, by the way, be so open in their faith, I think that's important to highlight because all it does is put a good light on what matters the most, and that's being leaders amongst men. And so, shout out to Will Anderson there. But getting back to what should Houston do with that money, I see why most people are wanting to see Houston capitalize on Stroud's rookie deal. Because again, referencing Seattle, majority of their offensive playmakers, they got a lot of free agents this year they're gonna have to pay. So maximizing when the money, and they got a lot of money this year, but maximizing when the money is right is always important. Though, when was the last time a quarterback won a Super Bowl on their rookie deal? I think that may have been Patrick Mahomes. I think so. And he set a year under Alex Smith. But some of the offensive cap hits for 2026 are ridiculous. You got Deshaun Watson at 1 with 80 mil. Mahomes sits at number 2 with 78 mil. 12 of the first 13 major offensive cap hits for 2026 are all QBs. Houston does not come in until the 29th and 30th of the top 30 with Nico Collins and Titus Howard, both at 27 million, which again, you want to talk about flexibility. And Houston is going to need it because where Houston lacked in spending in 2025, they also lacked in production. And that's the offensive side of the ball. Per OTC, over the cap, offensive spending versus output 2025 had Houston has Houston as a low cap hit and a bad offense based on offensive EPA per play metrics, sitting at negative 0.02. The only teams worse than Houston in that same category of low spenders and bad offensive output were New Orleans, not a playoff team. New York Jets, not a playoff team. Raiders, not a playoff team. Titans, not a playoff team. So in my opinion, this puts into perspective two things. Just how great that Houston defense was in 2025. Right? And also why Houston can no longer operate in that manner. They got to open up the checkbook and they got to spend some money on the offensive side of the ball, right? I think that's very important to talk about. Another possibility of re-signing guys, but bringing guys in on the offensive side of the ball. Greg Allman of Fox Sports has Braden Smith signing with the Texans in the offseason. And he also has Houston re-signing Ed Ingram. With this move, this would obviously make Titus Howard a left guard once again. And when I look at Braden Smith over the last couple of seasons, 2025, 1 sack allowed, 19 hurries allowed, 26 pressures allowed, 6 penalties. In 2024, that was the numbers I just gave you was 2025. 2024, 4 sacks allowed, 18 pressures, 18 hurries and 24 pressures. Now for the Houston Texans, I've been adamant on you want to get some guys in here that can move the ball and move bodies off the line of scrimmage and get to the second level. So when I hear Braden Smith, who's a right tackle, by the way, on Houston's radar, this concerns me again. I kind of wonder, where are the eyes going when we analyze and break down Houston offensive line? What makes Titus good is his ability to play the edge, guys. Right? That's what makes Titus Howard really good. When you see a tackle completely shut down TJ Watt, excuse me, that guy needs to stay out there more times than not. And so the passing game may run a little bit better when he's at right guard. But what you lose in the run game, short yardage blocking, right? Get into the second level. You lose that. Plus, if you listen to Titus Howard, he wants to play tackle. And I think that's because he wants a Pro Bowl nod. And I don't think that's going to come at guard. I just don't think Titus Howard would ever be a top 5 guard in the NFL. But a full season at tackle, there's a strong possibility that Titus Howard could end the year as a top 5 tackle in the NFL, top 5 right tackle at that. The best yards before contact for Houston in terms of being able to run the ball last year, that was when Titus was either at tackle, but that game Stroud used his legs a lot. That was against the Buccaneers, or when Titus Howard was not on the field, and that was the Jags game. The 5 games with Titus Howard at left guard, 304 snaps, the Texans averaged 0.8 yards before contact. The 6 games Titus Howard was at right tackle, they averaged 1.89 yards before contact. I'm not just a numbers guy. You guys know that. And also other factors should be considered. But in this case, I think the numbers support the eye test regarding Howard in the run game. He needs to be at tackle, and Houston needs to spend money interior this offseason. And here's the thing, man. Titus Howard is making $27 million this year as it stands currently. Obviously, we look at the restructures, which is what I talked about in the first segment. And the question is, Houston has the ability to create some cap space. Titus Howard will be one of those restructures. I believe so, for the Houston Texans, unless they view this year as his last year. They maybe want to move on without necessarily having to pay Titus Howard in the future. In that case, then maybe that kind of determines what Houston does in the draft, right? Maybe they do go after a tackle if they view Titus Howard as just a 1 more year kind of guy, which is kind of similar to what the Houston Texans view Laremy Tunsil in 2024 in a lot of ways. The extension was coming up. He didn't raise the level of offensive line play. It was time to move on from him. Plus, he was getting up in age. I kind of wonder if Houston views Titus Howard that way. I've talked about that before on this show. But again, if Houston's going to go all in, continuity is important, number one. CJ Stroud hated that the Houston Texans traded Laremy Tunsil. I think the rumor was he drove up to the NRG Stadium to go talk about that. Titus Howard at right tackle would be great for Laremy Tunsil, excuse me. He'd be great for Ariante Ursery. He'd be great for Ed Ingram, but I also think he'd be great for pass protecting the quarterback, CJ Stroud, which he does a very great job of. And again, he won't move the needle in terms of being able to run block. He won't. And that's not a shot at Titus Howard. I think that's more I think that comment is more so in favor of Howard being where he wants to be. Say when you love someone, you just don't treat them bad. Oh, how I feel so sad. They're moving him to left guard again. He's saying he wants to play a tackle every game. Why they just won't let him stay where he want to be, where he want to be. and that's at right tackle. I don't know why I just did that. I'm just having fun. And again, with the money Houston can create, Houston can very well target Mays, top guard, or Linderbaum, who's the top center, mid-level guard who can run block, and then use the rest of the holes that need to be filled and address them in the draft. Right? You can do that. You're going to get your tight end, a D tackle, running back. Top end guys in the 2026 draft with this culture, with this coaching staff, then if you're Houston, you be kind of set. And the best thing about it is running backs out the first round, they're going to be cheap. D tackles in the first round, they're going to be a little bit more expensive. You have that 50-year option. You pair that D tackle with Will Anderson after Danielle Hunter's career is over with the Houston Texans. You get your tight end. This is a very deep tight end class. I found it funny that I saw this stat. The day 3 depth at tight end in this year's class is ridiculously crazy. But the number is the tight ends invited to the combine over the last 5 years in 2022, 21, 23, 20, 2024, 16, 2025, 21, but this year, 27. There's going to be a lot of late day 2, day 3 tight ends available for the Houston Texans, and I think it's important to properly assess what those tight ends could do for the offense and what you're asking of whatever tight end you want to come in. Or if you're Houston, you can go out and get David Njoku. However you feel, once they create that cap relief, Houston will have a lot of options to improve the offensive side of the ball and retain important guys on both sides of the ball. Thank you for I don't know why I said that, because I got to hear from you guys. Ear to the street segment on the way. More Locked On Texans talk before we close out today's show. The Winter Olympics are going on right now. They're officially here. And if you're anything like us here at the Locked On Network family, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes more sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about the most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay focused and connected to the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow get more intense and fast. Speed skating races decided by inches. FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience very engaging from start to finish. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. Closing out today's episode. Listen, I want to tell y'all something that needs to be said, right? Because I know for Houston it's going to be about adding playmakers. And I want to mention Deebo Samuel's contract is set to be voided today, leaving behind $12.3 million of dead cap to the Commanders. The 30-year-old earned $18.25 million in 2025 and carries a near $16 million valuation into free agency. Ladies and gentlemen, Texan fans across the nation, no! Don't y'all go out there talking about we can sign Deebo, and not at all. Not at all. Also, it's going to be important to talk about on Friday's show, with the Texans being as close as they are to the Super Bowl, why it's important to continue to improve. Listen, the opportunity ain't going to be what it is this year moving forward. So they got to stay, they got to keep up with the Johnsons, so to speak, right? You see other team getting some offensive playmakers, you got to do the same, right? But as I dive into the Ear to the Street segment, I think it's important to look at this comment to start it off. Jorge De Leon 8006. Now, this is on the either the Nick Caserio or CJ Stroud conversation from Wednesday. And my man said it's the system, the Patriots offense let receivers adjust their routes to the defense's coverages, which is why a veteran receiver room is very important, which is also why many teams stay away from this offensive system because of how difficult it is to run efficiently. And the only ones to successfully run this offense was, you guessed it, Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. Now, for me personally, I would run the West Coast West Coast offense, Bobby just set that running this scheme. Again, I do want to highlight, Nick Caserio was in that West Coast offense with Sean McVay for a couple of seasons, and I think that it's important for Houston to get back to, I guess, the idea of mixing both up, right? And I would say for Houston, maybe from 25 to 25, you run that West Coast offense. You get down in that red zone. Maybe when you get to that red zone, maybe that Patriot way that you guys hate so much, and I understand why. But when you give the receivers the flexibility to adjust the coverages, maybe in the red zone, that's where it may better fit them, right? And I say that because for Houston, you still want to get down there to a place where you can score points, which – again, how much of that did we see for the entirety of this season? Like, did Nick Caserio make those adjustments throughout the year to where before we get to a goal line to goal line, from goal line to goal line situation from 25 to 25, maybe we are running a simpler scheme. And when we get into the red zone, maybe that's when I'm asking more of the receivers and quarterbacks that maybe the offense isn't as simple as maybe from 25 to 25, right? And maybe that's the reason why Houston offense in the red zone sucks so bad, which is an area of the area that I think both Nick Caserio and everybody on the offensive side of the ball, staff and players included, need to be better at in 2026. And again, that's why a lot of us look at Ben McDaniels, who has a lot of Patriot ties, and wonder, is he still a guy to be coaching the receivers? Because they struggled with that this year, especially with two young receivers. That was an issue for the Houston Texans. Now, this is from Tyrannical Michael Mester. I mean, your name on YouTube is your name, and whatever you want to call yourself, I'm with it, brother. Stop with the poor CJ nonsense. He's wrecked mentally, period. He needs to have someone kick his tail into rear end to get out of his head and pat on his back, and not just a pat on the back. I wish I would kind of spell check some of these things. Yes, O-line was an issue, but many QBs with worse offensive lines did far better. Bottom line, CJ needs to get out of his own head and man up, period, or he walks after this season. That is how a lot of Texan fans feel. Okay. Houston picks up the fifth-year option. They got it for 2 more seasons, right? This is year 4. Next year will be year 5. They'll have him under contract. It is still up to the Houston Texans front office to fix the issues that they failed to address before Stroud even got here. Like, I don't think a lot of us understand missing on King Green that bad hurt Houston. Because what Houston lacked in the run game, they were, from an interior offensive lineman perspective, they were supposed to get it from that young man. And now he's out the league. Right? Banking on Shaq Mason a second year, and he was just completely out of it. Not bringing back George Fant, right? Like, those things hurt Houston this year. Left guard after left guard after left guard, after then finally settling on Titus Howard. So I'm not against what you're saying, right? I think C.J. Stroud absolutely needs to be more demanding and commanding offensively as a quarterback. And I think for a lot of us, if we take ourselves out of it and look at the history of quarterbacks, especially dating back to 2000, each and every franchise quarterback was a guy that was in some ways just on the path and journey of perfection, right? I mean, you look at some of those old Peyton Manning videos or Tom Brady videos or Phillip Rivers videos, and some of those guys just didn't take losing well. They didn't take bad practices well. They didn't take, not being on the same page well, whether it was with the offensive line, tight ends, or receivers, or running backs. That is an area of C.J. Stroud's game where I want to see the major growth. And I think if he gets to that point, then he can surpass that 2023 rookie year. I think so. Let's go with him, my man, Paul Lawrence. We need a running back more than a wide receiver. A running back is a must in the draft and fix the offensive line. But the Texans swarm. I 100%. I don't 100% agree, but I agree with you. Because I do think the Houston Texans need another receiver. Xavier Hutchinson, I don't think gonna cut it. I don't. Got some good back and forth in this show. Shout out to Sideline Sarah, of course. Let's check this one out right here. Joseph Gilliey. There are several issues, but we went from the world is ending the week before the Super Bowl to now making excuses. The last 3 years, everybody said we had X player on our hour like Tank, it would be different. This is a problem. Everybody is nervous about CJ, and I think we should have a backup plan just in case, or we will waste his defense. Joseph, now that I 100% agree with. Let me shout out Joseph. Shout out you, Joseph, because you're right. This is a reason why I think Houston should every year address wide receiver. This is also I hold Houston to the fire with the lack of addressing tight end. It's been bad, right? It's been poor, and even when they had Irv Smith in here, I thought Irv Smith was a guy that the Texans should have kept around a little bit more. But I think when we look at Houston's future now, if Houston can go all in free agency in some way, not 100% all in because they have to create that relief. So go all in areas where they need the upgrades, then I think the 2026 draft could be viewed as the backup plan. All right, you can still go into the 2025 draft, and if you go into free agency and sign a running back for a 2-year deal, you can still go in the 2026 draft and get your running back. You can still go in the 2026 draft and get your wide receiver. You can still sign you a David Njoku. Then late in the draft, you can sign you another tight end. You can still do some of these things if the free agency is addressed and assessed properly. Thank you for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. And follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Until next time, ladies and gents, Texas fans across the nation, peace.